Mixing with Mike, mixing tip. When is a mix finished? This is maybe one of the questions that I get perhaps more than any other. And it sounds a little bit crazy to think about. It's like, when do you actually stop mixing? And so, while there's no specific technique or detail that I can get into that gets into the specifics of this, and I just took that mastering thing off the end of it. My general take on when a mix is finished has more to do with a vibe listen. And so, in listening to something, one of the problems when you're mixing, obviously, is that you are so acutely in tune with the details of the mix and all the subtleties of it. You already know in your brain all the things that you've done, how you've processed things, the lengths of reverbs, what reverbs you've chosen, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And you can kind of drive yourself crazy with all the levels and micromanaging every little thing. And sometimes there is a point that you cross. There's a threshold that you always cross um, with this type of thing, where there is a transition from where it feels really good to where it transitions into sounding really good. And that's a very, very dangerous territory. What I've found in my experience in working with these types of things is that I know a mix is done, and I've just learned to put on a different hat when I listen for the final mix. So even when somebody sends me a mix to evaluate, or I'm mastering and I'm listening to something, when I or if I'm working with a private student and working with them on a mix, what I'm listening for as I'm going through is the feeling or vibe. So with my more advanced students who have gotten through all the technical details, and now I'm judging them on the quality of the work that they're bringing in terms of, like, okay, how well did you present or represent this particular song? What I want to do is, when I listen to the song, I want to kind of feel that I'm enjoying an experience. And wherever that experience derails, or if it derails, then I know there's something wrong with it. So one of the things that I think is very difficult to get over is that this idea of perfection, this idea that just because you have the ability to do something doesn't mean that you should. And sometimes a vocal kind of being tucked in to a mix in a certain section actually helps it to be more exciting. Whereas one might be inclined to make it exactly the same level in the mix throughout, and that doesn't necessarily always serve it. And probably the biggest thing with this is always what the meaning of the song is, what the vibe of the song is, what is the prevailing sentiment of the song, and does the mix actually represent that feeling or vibe effectively? So in other words, if it's a song, if it's a love song and it's an R&B track, so this is kind of what we're going to listen to here for a second. When I'm listening to the mix, I want to notice how it carries. How does the song build? Does it carry from section to section? Are there things that are mixing? Does this sound too crowded? Does this sound open enough? Is this, feeling right? So as I'm going and kind of guiding through the mix, is like, is my focus on the vocal throughout, right? Am I paying, like, other things are going on and other elements are going on, but is my focus on the vocal? Am I paying attention to the story? This is a very difficult switch to flip, because when you have your engineering hat on, you're so focused on details and hearing things that most other people don't hear. When a consumer listens to something, they never comment on the snare sound or the reverb or something, or maybe it's like a particular musical performance they may comment on. But they either like it or they don't. They have a feel for it. It feels good or it doesn't. It's much more of a gut instinctual type of thing. And it's very important. It's critically important that you don't lose that, because people will respond to a crappy mix that feels good more than they will a great sounding mix, a mix that sounds great but doesn't feel good. That's so important to really understand that, there's a threshold you cross where, if it's feeling really good, once you kind of get into the sounding good range, you have to go a much farther distance to get back to feeling good, where it gets to be super cool. There are people who really specialize in that, and like Mutt Lang, or somebody's like, I've also seen like producers like Bob Rock, who will take like a week to do a mix. and they'll spend a whole week doing a mix, and they'll go through that. Hey, it feels great in the first couple of days, then it's kind of like in this kind of sounding really good but not feeling right, and then they kind of push through to the other side. If you're willing to do that, then that can be like ridiculous and you can make hit records. But if not, then sometimes it's better to kind of stop at that feeling really, really good and kind of work with that and make more general adjustments and tweaks. So let's listen to this mix, and then kind of judge it from that perspective. So as you're listening through it, kind of put on your consumer hat and listen to it and feel it. And now, if something stands out to you and pokes you and says, hey, that's not that seems like came out of nowhere, or the flow seems to be disrupted, or I lost my focus on the vocal, that is the point where you rewind back to and stop. So let's kind of have a listen here. So
Slow down, baby, take a moment and breathe. I can hear what you're saying. Stop for a minute, come sit there with me. I can see you're afraid, and I don't know what to tell you. You're scared I might fail you, and so you're leaving here before it goes wrong. Don't you know you can't keep running from where you belong? Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I'll find you, you again. Pretend, oh yeah. And I'll find you, you again. No river to run or mountain to climb. I won't let goodbye be a final reply. Baby, we're far from the end. So come on, baby, let me help you believe in you and me. Come on, man. Yeah, 'cause I will stay here for as long as you need. Don't keep pushing away, 'cause the stories they tell you are just meant to scare you from being here with me where you belong. Tell me what I do get round of your smile. So if you now tell me you're gone, remember the words in the song. When your feet can't carry on, I'll carry you home. Leaving again, I'll find you again. Pretend, oh yeah. And I'll find you again. I won't let this die with more tears to cry. I won't let goodbye be a final reply. Baby, we're far from the end. If you say you're leaving, no, I'll be following. And I'll find you again. Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I'll find you again. If you say you're leaving, no, I'll be following. And I'll find you again. Oh yeah, oh yeah. And I'll find you again. If you say you're leaving, no, I'll be following. And I'll find you again.
okay, so this in listening to this mix, And going through it, what I'm really listening for is the feel and the vibe. Do I really stay focused on the vocal from beginning to end? And I pretty much do. And I do notice other elements here. Now, it's interesting. It'd be interesting to hear your comments if you're listening to this, and kind of what you hear, because putting on a different hat, or somebody who hasn't gone through this mix, and this mix is been done entirely in headphones as part of the live mixing with Mike class. So if you're watching this on the YouTube channel, or if you're catching this video from there and you haven't seen the process, then you're actually listening with fresher ears, more from a consumer thing. So there's 2 points that I want to make, and I'm going to answer a couple of questions. One of the questions here is like, what is the average time for a mix, and how long does it take for a certain song? And it's and then the follow up to that is that a weird question? It's not a weird question, because it's so much based on how well the song is written, performed, recorded, and arranged and kind of laid out. So a lot of time can be taken up with technical aspects, like removing distortion, pitch fixing vocals, cleaning up edits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sometimes making arrangement changes, taking out parts that are too busy, cleaning up things like that. And so the total running time for a mix, there's no sort of set time. Like, you can't like put like one of those timers like they have playing chess, where you got like X number of hours to finish the mix, and if you haven't finished it, then you're not a good mix engineer. There are some mixes that I can like generally pull together, get 80% of the work done in like a couple of hours, where the majority of it comes together. But to really hone it in and kind of pull it into focus, it may take another 6, 8, 10, 12, or 16 hours. It really depends on how quickly I kind of get to the essence of the song and the vibe, and what really feels right and really carries the message for the song. And that can be expedited by the producer or artist or some other element in there who has a vision for the song. You have to have kind of a vision or a goal. So if you're just sort of arbitrarily mixing and looking at technical details as part of the process of mixing, it can actually take a really, really long time, because you're sort of guessing, you're sort of shooting in the dark for a direction, hoping that you land on something. The closer you can come to establishing a vision or a picture for the mix of what you want it to sound like, even looking at a template finished commercial production that is sort of a target sound or vibe that you're going after, that is incredibly helpful. It's not about matching the frequencies or the amount of compression, but it's about matching the feeling, maybe the tonal character, maybe something that represents like the a sonic characteristic that really suits the song. Most of it is experience. Also, songs range. You could have a 12-track mix, which could take you a couple of hours, or you could have a track that's like 80 tracks that ends up taking you several days to finish, because there's just so much stuff to go through and to get it to all blend together, and you may end up spending 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hours just kind of pulling it all together and organizing it so that you can actually mix it. So there's no solid answer for that, and no guideline that kind of goes along with those things. And also, how consistently do you have when you're working, how much consistent time do you have? It's much more difficult to pick up a mix, and like this one has happened over the course of 17 weeks, and I think generally somewhere in the range of an hour to an hour and a half on average for each week. But also, I'm describing a lot of the processes as I'm doing them, whereas I was mixing, as if I was mixing, I would just start doing stuff. And there's also some experimenting and some different ideas and lots of things. So and adding the teaching experience, that certainly adds a lot of time. And also mixing it once a week in for such short periods of time, it would go much faster if I just dedicated a day to doing it, because I could get my I'm not picking up and trying to remember what my mindset was from a week and a half ago. So the more consistent straight time that you can spend, the closer you're going to get, or the faster you're going to do. It's also important to take breaks, and that's a really great point coming from the chat here. Taking breaks is really important in the process of mixing. A really good habit to have is, as you're mixing, if you feel like if you try something, it doesn't work, you try another thing, it doesn't work, you try a third thing and it's not working, leave the room. Like undo, 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 and leave the room. Because what that means is that you've lost your perspective on it. It's like a really good rule, just kind of like if you're doing things and it's like that's worse or that's not really right or it's not the effect that I'm going for, take a break. Go out, walk the dog, go outside, get something to drink, hang out with somebody, take a break, make a phone call, surf the net for a little while, get out of the room, right? Walk away, come back in. All you need is like 10 minutes sometimes, 15 minutes. If you get your attention, you can kind of reset yourself. And then when you sit down, listen back from the beginning and then just kind of feel it, take it in. And then usually what happens is you'll hear right away what's off. You may be trying to adjust the guitar, but it's really the bass has got a problem. And that's affecting the guitar, making it harder to hear. Those types of things are really important lessons to do. There is no, because it's such a subjective thing, there is no way to definitively say like it should be this amount of time, it should take you this long, or this is like the guideline for it being finished. I will say that if you are listening to the mix and you have that ability to put on that feeling perception or consumer perception of the mix and kind of feel it out and feel the overall flow and energy, if it ebbs and flows as it should naturally with the arrangement and the song, then that's gonna tell you more than anything that the mix is finished or close to finished. If you play it for other people, the one last rule and one last tip I'll give you is never, ever, ever ask somebody what they think about a mix, unless it's somebody who sort of professional or have more of a professional relationship where they're going to give you an honest answer. Never ask somebody what they think. Watch them. Look at them. Notice the way that they respond to the music, because you get their true gut instinct, not their, oh, I don't want to offend you, like coming over and visiting you in your studio and your work, even though they may hate the track. Notice what happens. Like, are they is their body moving? Are they kind of grooving to the music? If somebody gets up and while you're talking and they're going to the bathroom and they're singing the melody or something in their head, like that's a really good sign. Look for those subtle cues. If the after you play a track, the first thing you hear is like, "Hey, are you hungry?" Then your mix isn't finished. And that's probably that's maybe that's your number one cue if you're playing it for somebody else. So no hard rules on that type of thing, but maybe some tips that can sort of help you out. So anyway, that's one that I get a lot, and it's such a hard question to answer, but maybe there's some helpful information in there. So mixing with my mixing tip: when is a mix finished?